Hi there, we'll be getting started in just a minute. We would like to ask all of you who are not presenting to stop your video feed. The reason for this is it preserves our bandwidth for the presentation. Thank you. Hi, Donna. Okay. Can I unmute you? Okay. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. We are presenting today in our Small Bites, Big Impact on staying in conversation about racism. I want to note at the beginning that this is the first in a 6-part series. Today, Donna and I will be doing an overview, and in every subsequent session, we will be taking a deeper dive into each of our subtopics today. So I'm Kirsi Aulin. I'm the director of the Ombuds office at CU Boulder. And I've had the distinct joy to collaborate with Donna Mejia on this series. Donna is an associate professor here at CU Boulder. Would you like to just say hi, Donna?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm with the Theater and Dance Department, and I'm also an affiliate faculty member with Women and Gender Studies and Ethnic Studies. So hello to all my peeps, and hello to all my new friends that I'll be making today.
So I'm going to just go over a few logistics. You are in listen and view only mode. That is intentional because we need to preserve the bandwidth for the presentation. So if you find that your video is on, please turn it off. We would like for you to go ahead and open your chat box now. If you hover your cursor over the bottom of your Zoom screen, a variety of options pop up for you. One of them is chat. If you hit that, you'll be able to just open your chat box. You can move it to the side of your screen. The reason for that is you're going to be able to see comments and some wisdom from your fellow participants, but also we'll be asking you to respond to questions during the presentation. Carrie McLean from the Ombuds office at CU Boulder is providing technical assistance behind the scenes. She greeted you in the chat box when you arrived. If you have any questions about that, you can certainly chat her in the chat box. I want to also note that we will be sending you a follow-up email after this presentation is done. And that email will include a recording of today's session as well as any of the resources that we mentioned during the session today. I do want to say that because we are recording the session, when you chat, please note that your name is attached to the chat. We will also be running a few polls. The polls come through anonymously in case that is important to you. Okay. That's all we need to cover in terms of logistics, housekeeping. Let's get started. So we're going to send you a poll right now, and you should see this any second. Great, I see the replies coming in. Terrific. Okay, everyone's voted. Here are the results. So 82% of you said you have had an occasion to learn about Juneteenth, and 18% of you say that you have not. So thank you for that. Okay, Donna.
You know, today is Juneteenth. It is a holiday celebrating the day that descendants of African slaves and African slaves learned in Texas that they were free. Now, of course, finding out that they were free came 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln made the Emancipation Proclamation. And the delay in them being notified of their freedom is their first demarcation and noting historically of the kind of systemic racism that has been proliferated against African peoples. And so today is Juneteenth. We would ask you to, in addition to this program, to find out maybe a little bit more about Juneteenth. And so I would love to encourage you to look at the wiki that we're going to put up in your poll, excuse me, in the chat window right now, so that you can read the wiki on Juneteenth, learn more about why this holiday is important and why we're trying to aid in the effort to make it a national holiday. And this dates all the way back to 1865. And so our efforts to make it a national holiday were just renewed by Senator Kamala Harris. And so you can follow her efforts in the Senate to try and get the holiday a national recognized holiday.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
The next thing we feel is imperative to do is to make sure we acknowledge the land on which we are operating. So if you'll please allow us to do so, we would like to share with you
So the University of Colorado operates on native land associated with the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. And we do want to acknowledge that and acknowledge the history of this land.
And I would like to beg your indulgence while I acknowledge my ancestors and with gratitude. The work that I am doing professionally in the world is very much a result of the strength and the resistance that my ancestors provided. I am a descendant of the Mississippi Choctaw, the Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas Coushatta tribes. So I would like to say, Matakuye Oyasin, gratitude to all of my relations. The topic that we're diving into today is something that would take much more than just a portion of an hour. So we want to acknowledge the complexity of the subject. And in talking to you about it, we have pledged to expand this series. So today is going to be an introductory overview of some key concepts that are very strongly in discussion in the public sphere at this time. So if you'd like to be a part of that extended series, we will be putting that on the Ombuds page. And we have a poll at the end of our discussion to find out a little bit more about your scheduling preferences so that we can take a deep dive into everything we're going to be discussing today. May I please have the next slide? For me personally, and I know Kirsi shares this sentiment, I would like to offer a pledge before we go fully into the discussion. So I'm going to read this to you. I will be encouraging and humorous in my offerings, and I will explain thoughtfully and clearly. I will offer citation for what I have learned and concede openly what I have not yet learned. I will ensure a welcoming, judgment-free, and inviting environment where counterpoint ideas can be exchanged diplomatically. Our discussion will welcome new ideas and perspectives, and I will remain receptive to these concepts changing and transforming. Please let me know if you perceive glaring holes in my research. I intend to give you tools to increase your conversancy, expand your boundaries, nurture independence. I have no interest in telling you what to think. Rather, I am passionate about helping you ask better questions so the world can reveal its many self-evident truths to you without interference from socially indoctrinated filters. I will respect our differences in and out of this discussion. Your dignity and comfort are important to me. And in return, I ask for your courage, diplomacy, open thinking, and active involvement. I will hold myself accountable to the same caliber and standards I am requesting of you. This is the pledge that comes from my personal syllabus. If you find it useful, I invite you to screenshot it and please put it on your syllabus.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
I want to say that I personally, as well as we at the Ombuds office, and I can now say based on the email traffic I've received this morning, that at the CU Boulder campus, we are so grateful to Donna for sharing her expertise, her experience in this area of having these tough conversations, introducing people to thinking differently. And I just want to acknowledge that Donna has been knee deep in conversations about racism in education for over 20 years. And we at the Ombuds office are merely benefiting from that and from her willingness to share with us. So thank you very much. This is incredibly generous of you to participate today.
Thank you, Kirsi, very much for making the space for this conversation to happen. Friends, I just want to say briefly, I am primarily a dance educator. I teach theory, history, and movement technique for CU Boulder. However, I'm the first globally in my field of study to teach in higher education. And so it was actually part of helping to establish the field to address some of the practices in the field. So with all of my touring engagements, I always included some type of a public lecture in addition to a performance or a panel discussion or something like that. And there were some very concerning practices in the industry at the time when I started working professionally in 2000 in the industry. And so these conversations have evolved out of the kind of deconstructing conversations we've tried to have in those dance arenas of transnational fusion dance, of looking at what does global citizenship mean and how do we engage meaningfully and how do we scrutinize our practices for better inclusivity. So the tools that we're discussing today start with, I think, a cycle of awareness. First of all, every time you encounter a teachable, learnable moment, to meet it with awareness. We're going to talk about that. Listening with sincerity. Questioning with courage. Really leaning into what's happening at the moment and trying to expand your understanding of it. Learning about valuable resources. There is such a beautifully well-trodden path already established for anti-racism work. And so we are going to share those resources with you, or at least a starting point for those resources. And then actionable items, how to act with integrity, how to proceed forward in a way that you feel is constructive and honors your best gifts in the situation. So we're going to jump into really the conversation of how do you start with steadying yourself. We all know that we have different skill sets and different approaches and different perspectives on our own experiences of racism in our community and in the country. But what I would like to emphasize is that I teach from a place of diplomacy studies, that someone who is a diplomat understands that the stakes are high. Their goal is to walk into a situation and try to create enough of an open space that information can be exchanged meaningfully and honestly, transparently, and then help to work towards common goals. And so for me, being able to set aside the need to be right, the need to make others wrong, is my personal approach to my own encounters with racism and taking a diplomat's approach. So here we go.
Would you like for me to run the poll now? The next
Yes,
poll?
please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. This poll is on microaggressions. And here it is. So you should be seeing it. The question is, have you had to negotiate microaggressions on campus or in the Boulder community in the last academic year? I decided to read it out this time. I realized there are some folks that are on their phones and do not see the screen. But we are having lots of people weighing in, so that's terrific. Hopefully the poll is visible to you longer this time.
Looks like we're at about 90% of the participants
Yep.
responding.
So I'm going to end the polling now, and then here you go. So 52% of us are saying that yes, we have had to negotiate microaggressions. 25% say no, 23% say we're not sure.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your answers on that. For those moments when you encounter weirdness or direct aggression, let's talk about how to arrive in that moment and how to handle it. I'm going to start with our first topic, meeting the moment with awareness. Please have the next slide.
Yes. Hang on. I'm getting the next poll ready too. So
thank you.
Okay, hang on.
So while we are transitioning, it's, I think, a bit inappropriate to say, be present without saying, do you have the tools to steady yourself when you meet one of those very intense moments with an interaction that feels toxic? Specifically, in a racist interaction, if you are being aggressed upon or if you are witnessing something that you think constitutes racism, how do you steady yourself? There are personal tools, there are communal tools, there are interpersonal tools all out there, but the truth is your temperament, your educational level, your own visual presentation, all of those things impact your ability to negotiate a situation and whether or not you feel empowered to respond and act. But the one thing that is always available to you is the ability to steady yourself. And so in my conversations in the public, I talk very much about when you feel shaken emotionally, intellectually, or even physically, what is your embodied response? And how can you use that embodied response, what your body is telling you, to try and find a place where you can still think clearly, where you can try to start to process what is occurring and not check out. And really that mind-body connection, I think, as a dancer, is hackable. I see it as something that we can control from either side. And so I can meditate for hours and lower my blood pressure and have an impact on my body through the power of my mind, or I can move, dance, walk, climb rocks, do anything with my body to help ease the burden of my mind. And so you have many tools at your disposal to try and find some steadiness. But in the moment of crisis, in the moment of collision, breath is the most powerful barometer for control. Breath is connected to your system in a way that it provides an indicator as to whether or not you are losing integration or able to find some place to start processing. So a deep breath is powerfully the first tool of being able to steady yourself in a situation. And as you feel you're negotiating maybe shock, demoralization, or disorientation, maybe insults or devaluation of your being, we will provide some starter resources in our guides to give you personally tools that feel they align with the kind of person that you are, from meeting the moment with awareness.
Donna, this particular poll is not appearing. Would you like for me to transfer that to a chat, or would you like to move on? Okay, so if you feel comfortable chatting, remember your name is attached to the chats. Please chat to us. How have you felt, have you felt restless, unsettled, or overwhelmed during this time? Yeah.
There's an amazing overall response.
Hearing, yes, saddened. Hell yeah, absolutely, very much. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not, it's a very dimensionalized response, isn't it, everyone? It's a matter of feeling that you've got your intellect, your emotions, and your body involved. Perhaps your dreams have been disrupted, your sleep patterns disrupted, maybe other things happening in your body, but to be able to integrate the truth that the body offers you is my personal approach as a dancer. I personally feel that the body is incapable of untruth, and that being able to deal with your physical symptoms of restlessness or dislocation is a potential healing starting point, and definitely not to be forgotten.
I'd be curious to hear from our participants, you know, what do you do that brings you the sense of grounding that Dawn is talking about? You know, how do you steady yourself in the whirlwind of daily activities? And there are really no right or wrong answers. If you could chat to us what you do, you know, the things that I have heard that are restorative to people range from knitting to singing in a choir to meditation, you name it. Okay, we've got some really cool examples, walking your dog and gardening and running and nature and tea, spinning yarn, movement. Yeah, this is
Powerful. Thank
great.
you.
This is great. Sometimes I work with people who don't know what is grounding and steadying for them. Sounds like many of you are very aware of what is restorative for you. That's
And it is
great.
a luxury to be able to indulge those things as well. Sometimes, if we're in disenfranchised populations, a certain relentlessness uh, of, of disenfranchisement constantly feels like we just can't get a break. We just can't restore ourselves. And so, if you are someone that knows how to fortify yourself with awareness and to meet a moment of intensity with awareness, think about how you could also extend those skills to others who are depleted, others who are maybe struggling to find calm under duress and to try to reserve judgment under those circumstances. Just something to think about. I would like to encourage the next slide, please. Would like to
Donna, I'm noticing that we are seriously running out of time. So
move quickly.
just wanting to let you know that.
Thank
Then,
And friends, I wanted to let you know this is part of a larger series that will be launched. So just to let you know, this is just an overview.
so
Continuing.
each of these topic slides will have its own presentation. Um, Listening with sincerity. I think this is a hard one. Um, you know, in my work with people for, gosh, over 30 years now, I've noticed that we all think we listen well. Everyone thinks they listen well, but we all also know other people that don't listen well, right? So, what does it mean to listen with sincerity? How do you define it, Donna?
For me, it means really communicating your investment in finding a solution and perhaps even declaring the other person's inherent worth in a situation. Really, it means reserving any need and pausing any need to prove something and just sitting back to receive what is being offered rather than strategizing your next sting or your next move. It's not a suggestion to be a doormat, really. It's instead a choice of adopting the disposition of a skillful diplomat. A diplomat enters a situation aiming to understand and be the voice of reason when the stakes are high. We put up onto the screen 2 examples of how to acknowledge your presence when you are listening. And so we invite you to screenshot those and see if you feel those might be useful.
And, you know, it is difficult when someone hurts you, when you've hurt someone, to think about apologizing. And if we have been hurt and we go to talk to someone, then what's the first thing we notice? Generally, people become defensive. One very helpful thing to realize is that defensiveness is completely natural, that we all do it. There is a book that Dr. Lerner wrote in the last 2 years called Why Won't You Apologize? There's also an excellent podcast where Brene Brown is interviewing Harriet Lerner. about this book. But one of the things is that we can all learn to detect defensiveness in ourselves. We generally don't notice it at all when we ourselves are becoming defensive. But the excellent tip that Harriet Lerner gives is that if you pay attention to how you're listening and you notice that you start listening for what you disagree with, in other words, you're listening for what you disagree with, then you are being defensive. It starts with how we listen. If you go to our Lunch and Learn page on the Ombuds office, there is a webinar that I presented that's a brief introduction to the topic of apologies. So you can find a recording of that there. Shall I go to the next slide, Donna?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Our next slide is about questioning with courage. And I think one of the most important things we can do is address some terms that are being tossed around in media discussions and in the public sphere right now. I would like to start with the scholars Peggy McIntosh and Robin DiAngelo. These are two anti-racism white scholars who were attempting to amplify the issues that African descended peoples were putting onto the radar for hundreds of years. So their work was built on the voices of disenfranchised citizens who were constantly having their platforms and their voices interfered with. In 1970, Peggy McIntosh defined something called white privilege. Her concept of white privilege has been expanded into the concept of male privilege, scholar privilege. It's been generalized into many other fields of study. However, originally it came out of the binary of blackness and whiteness studies. Peggy McIntosh said, white privilege is how one's gender, race, or etc. may lead to unearned advantages and requires a willingness and structural understanding to recognize racism as the default system that institutionalizes an unequal distribution of resources and power. Robin DiAngelo in 2011 used her voice also to amplify these issues and just put out a book in 2018 giving summary to some of the articles that she published about white fragility. She says, white fragility is a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable to white folks, triggering a range of defensive moves. These moves include the outward display of emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behaviors such as argumentation, silence, and leaving the stress-inducing situation. These behaviors in turn function to reinstate racial equilibrium for whites. Racial stress results from an interruption to what is racially familiar. And so fragility has also been borrowed into other theoretical concepts. But I do want to say, when it comes to questioning, the first thing we have to do is recognize our positionality to the topic. What may be blocking our ability to perceive a situation accurately? So we wanted to offer these following questions on the screen as starting points for how you start to question with courage. And they should be arriving there. The first concept is fumble forward. I use this in my classes, and I designed this after watching students be too pensive and too hesitant to ask questions about a topic they were unfamiliar with. So when a student is about to raise their hand and ask a question in my class and they're unsure of the terminology, if they are not sure where they stand on an issue, if they are still learning about the topic and do not have defined ideas, they will say, I am about to fumble with my words. And the entire class as a chorus will respond with fumble forward. It is our social contract to reserve judgment for the next few minutes, to know that whatever is going to be shared is offered tentatively with a request for assistance from the rest of the community. We lean in, we help each other refine the question. Sometimes it's a lot of verbal surgery, sometimes it's clumsy, sometimes it's very precise, but we find a way to move forward out of an awkwardness of someone feeling too scared to ask a question. Other ways you can use fumble forward concepts. You can say, I'm going to fumble with what I want to say, but could you please bear with me while I ask you a question, because I am keen to learn more about this. Or you can say, I know we see things differently, but I really want to hear what your thoughts are about this. Would you be willing to please educate me on your perspective and experiences? And I wish to speak with you about a difficult topic, but I'm hoping to get past my discomfort and work towards mutual listening and understanding with you. Or something very direct. I'm not comfortable with what is happening here, and talking to you about it is very important to me. Those are just ways of getting unstuck when you find yourself in a situation where you're unsure of how to proceed. Kirsi, handing it to you.
Oh, Donna, I just love your wisdom here. I love that you're giving us these prompts because so often we're stuck with how to start. If it's okay with you, I'm going to move right along because some people may already need to leave.
Yes.
So I'm going to go to the next slide and just say that, you know, for a lot of white folks right now, there's a whole new universe of resources out there that they were unaware of until recently. And we'd really like to encourage you to lean into learning about things that you don't know about. If your department is doing things around education in this area that you find helpful, either chat us here in the chat box to let us know or pass that information on to the Ombuds office. We'd love to list that as a resource.
I also listed on there my commercial webpage as a resource because in all of the talks I've been doing globally on this topic, I get a lot of follow-up requests for additional resources expanding on the points of a talk. So I have a 4-page resource list on my website, which has been linked in the chat for you. So we invite you to start somewhere, start with anything. Do not let a sense of overwhelm paralyze you into inaction. What is important is that you know that all kinds of tools are available for you. So please utilize what we have presented. We will take a deeper dive in a future webinar on some of those resources.
And I will be emailing you again with a follow-up after, hopefully by the end of the day today, and I will be including links to all the resources mentioned.
And I see some other good resources going up in the
Yes.
chat. Thank you,
Yes.
everyone. Make sure you save the chat from today. We have close to 300 participants, so it'll be good to do some follow-up reading. Our last slide is about acting with integrity. How do you create an actionable item from a place that feels true to you? What I would say is just get off the pause button in some way, switch it into high gear, help it to trend, shine your courage to do the work and pull up a seat to the conversation, even if you don't have your words fully formed yet. You have to keep creating and learning with a new consciousness of who all of us aspire to be. The biggest thing is it takes all of us to heal the blind spot. And so truly, truly, it's a moment we move beyond superficial tourism and being dabblers in a topic. And we're willing to put our nose to the grindstone and say, I'm not going to let go until I learn what I don't understand. It's that kind of determination that gets us past the instability we've been suffering for hundreds of years and the discrimination we have been dealing with. So whatever it is that you do greatly, put all of yourself into it and let that be your starting place for a contribution as you learn more.
And I just want to say that expect to make mistakes. This is an area that I have been consciously working in for decades. And I'm always coming up against, oh, I did this microaggression today to someone. And I have this realization after this chat, after the exchange, and having the courage to learn how to apologize well, to offer restitution, to pledge to not do that anymore. I'm 52 years old and I feel like I'm finally feeling more comfortable with that. But expect that you'll make mistakes. Be ready to apologize and own that even with good intentions, you may not have done something well and that you can do it better next time. In my office, I like to tell people, we don't do perfect here. We do the best we can, and when we know better, we do better. And I try to lean against perfectionism with that.
I think what is also notable is if you are someone that is bringing a conversation of truth to someone else. We've talked a lot about how to respond, but if you need to initiate an action, I think what is also important to realize is that you have many paths. Sometimes disruption is necessary. Sometimes resistance is necessary. Sometimes seeking common ground is necessary. All of them are valid, and try not to vilify each other for the personal responses we have against the injustices we experience, to be forgiving with each other around that process. What we would like to do is, we unfortunately have to wrap up, but we do want to say that we will stay online for those of you that would like to hover around and ask some questions. We will be posting this video to YouTube immediately after. We will as well be emailing out the resource list to all of you who are registered, and there will be an additional series. So if you'd like to join us for a deeper dive, may we ask you to take this poll right now, where we find out a little bit more about your scheduling preferences. Would you like to meet weekly, bi-weekly, or once monthly? Please let us know what your preference is, and we'll get to scheduling. And we really thank you for sharing that feedback with us. There was so much, of course, we did not get to today.
Yeah.
And it is not to be in any way dismissive of this grave topic. It is really to start somewhere and to get some tools to work with the community as a whole to advance our understanding of this issue together.
Yeah, and I want to say that taking this format, short format, we were hoping that it would allow people to start somewhere. Start where you are, dip your toe in, start to get familiar. And then if you want, you can come to additional webinars and get a little bit deeper in each of these subjects. Donna has very generously agreed to stay on to answer questions or to talk with you. And, you know, I will be here as well. Feel free to chat your questions to us. I know that things have gone by quickly. We have not been able to respond to every chat. I apologize for that. There are over 200 people on this webinar, and so we've tried to do the best we can. But do you have other questions that you would like Donna to answer?
There is a technical question that's been coming up in the chat. People are asking how to save the chat. If you go down to the bottom of your chat window, there is your name that appears in the window at the bottom that should be highlighted in blue. And if you move your cursor to the right, there is a box with 3 dots. If you click that box open, it gives you the option to usually decide who you're going to chat with. And there should be also a save chat button in that vicinity. Hopefully you found the save chat button, and then it's saved. You can say save to my computer or save to the cloud, depending on what system you're on.
Okay, we have a question about, can the sessions be longer? You know, that's a good question. One of the things we found that, you know, in a short session, we're able to engage with more people because of time constraints they have with their schedules. I want to mention, though, that if your departments are interested in taking a deep dive into this work, you know, Donna is available for hire to do more intensive programs. And she's an incredible resource for our campus. And so,
Thank you for the plug, Kirsi.
well, I mean, you know, I appreciate that you're willing to be out there, you know, to take on this kind of work. And just want to note that in a webinar format, there are limitations, right? There's only so much that we can do in a short period of time or just in a webinar.
Friends, thank you also for letting us know that the chat save is not working, as those of us who are hosts will save the chat and address the questions that are coming up. In the meantime, please do give us a question and we'll start a discussion with you.
Okay.
We've gotten a lot of gratitude in the chat. I want to say thank you for that as well. If you haven't had a chance to grab the resources, Carrie, perhaps we could repost some of our resource links since the chat save is not working. May I trouble you to please repost? So it says, let's see, there's a question from Robin that says, do you think that staff on campus are safe? Oop, I lost it.
Did I make you lose it?
That's okay. I'll scroll up and get back to it. Robin, I apologize, I lost it. Here we go. Would you be able to address what can be wise, respectable, and sensitive way to take a stand on social media? Yes, refusing to be a bystander. There is wonderful training on getting past bystander syndrome and being able to say to someone, especially on social media, if they are posting toxic and threatening phrases to others, to say, you clearly have a blind spot that and are missing some information that you may not have had a chance to get exposed to. I would like to ask you to check out these resources before you feel you have the right to unload on others, and to stand up and say, by the way, I'm sorry, not everyone agrees with these sentiments. I, for one, feel blank. And to touch base with whoever is being targeted by the offense, to say, is there anything I can do to be helpful in this situation? They may crave privacy, they may crave community, but to check in with the person who is the victim of the offense and to say, how can I help? Rather than imposing help that you think is suitable, ask first. Would you be able, let's see, I would, oh, by the way, speaking of getting past bystander syndrome, I would encourage you to look at the Vancouver City Holla Back website. This is an organization that helped codify different techniques and suggestions for getting past bystander syndrome and how to intervene effectively in a live situation as well as online bullying and social media situations. So that is on my webpage if you'd like more information. Let's see. How do you think staff on campus are safe to be bold at the moment? Do you think that staff on campus are safe to be bold at the moment? Of course, each of us has different power structures we're negotiating in a system like this. What I can offer, aside from additional tools on communication, is I have never regretted speaking from a place of truth. Kirsi, I would love to invite you to chime in on this. Are you safe to be bold? Safety and comfort are two different things in these circumstances. Yeah. And so are you comfortable? Are you ever addressing it? It will probably never feel 300% comfortable, right? Are you safe to do so? If not, what resources are available to you on this campus to take a step forward towards that truth? The Ombuds office is one of them. Kirsi, I'll let you chime in.
Yeah, if people are in a situation where they know they need to have a specific conversation, we can certainly help, give you a consultation that's confidential and help you work through that. I do also want to say though, that in the last 15 years, I've heard more and more people saying they want to be safe. And what they really mean is, I don't want to be uncomfortable. And so I invite people to really analyze, if your physical safety is at stake, well, absolutely, you want to think twice about saying something. But often the safety really just, I will feel uncomfortable, is what it really comes down to. And that, in my mind, is not the same as safety. That is really not wanting to engage with things that are difficult. And I'd like to encourage everyone that you know, we can do difficult things. We can do those things that are hard. We have the capability. And that we don't have to be alone in doing them. There are many people on this campus who are here to support if you decide you want to do something that is not an easy thing to do.
I think the other thing I would offer is if you're worrying about what it will do to you, what I can say is it has been incredibly energizing and healing for me personally to be able to address every distortion and untruth in my world and to watch how much lighter I feel, how much better I feel. And so the level of intimidation that I felt before addressing those conversations dissipated almost immediately as understanding was able to be sought. Does that mean resolution? Not always, not always. Sometimes resolution is an agreement to disagree, but to at least know that I have been able to represent what is important to me. And I encourage you to know that it does invigorate you quite a bit.
And I want to, you know, I got a response to my comment saying I'm worried about being unemployed. It's not being uncomfortable. And I hear you. I mean, these are really tough times. I think that we are able to do more than we think we are. And often how you say something has more impact than the content of what you're saying. There are resources to help hone those skills. You know, lots of them out in the world. Also, there are trainings here on campus. Our office can help with consultations as well. For example, Crucial Conversations is a tool to hone some of those skills in having difficult conversations that's offered through human resources. It's not risk-free. I want to be completely honest. It's not risk-free when we step into sharing truth. And at the same time, there are strategies that can be used to help the conversation go as well as possible. We still have about 100 people on. Any further questions?
I'm getting some private questions that I can anonymously offer to the entire group. There's a question regarding what about checking in with your African American friends? Yes, absolutely. And what about those you don't know well? I can only speak about my own personal preferences here, as I am not an ambassador for the entire ethnicity that I am born of. But what I can say is it has felt unusual and overwhelming to suddenly receive a lot of correspondence of people saying, I care about you, I love you, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm doing great, actually. The agitation that's happening socially is having a positive benefit, and now I want to protect the agitators to make sure we don't have a whole generation of change makers falling sick from COVID-19. So I'm also trying to make sure I am helpful to those who are willing to be public with their voices. Other actionable things you can do is, I was on the bike path the other day, and someone, there was an African-American runner in front of me, and a group of folks, white folks, were running in the opposite direction, and they simply waved their hand to him and said, have a good run today, and smiled and ran off. Simple colloquialisms, a demonstration of friendliness goes an awful long way to know that you have a sense of belonging in your own community, even if you don't feel you have the established friendship with someone to approach them with, hey, you're Black, how's it going for you? And of course, that would not go over well with me, and I might end up getting pretty sassy with someone. But if they are able to approach me with just simple friendliness so that I know that I am welcome in that environment, it can really help. That's something that doesn't always happen in environments that are predominantly European American for me. Is there any way we can get these resources emailed to us? I can't seem to copy them. We'll be happy to do what we can to get the word out, and I will duplicate them on my website.
Yeah, and I want to mention that questions come up frequently. I'm guessing those folks did not hear our intro where we said we will be giving you a follow-up email with all the resources mentioned, as well as a link to the video of this session.
What if your truth is you think the other person is an absolute idiot?
That's what I was laughing at earlier, Donna. That happens.
I'm on happy hour with you, Lillian. Okay, so quite honestly, my goal under those circumstances is to do no harm. I guess I take kind of the Buddhist approach of how can I model good intervention without adding to the harm? And if that cannot be done effectively, how do I set a boundary and how do I protect myself? And those kinds of books and literature on those topics are also in the resource list on my website. Because yes, it is not always possible to have a high-minded resolution on a topic. And under those circumstances, it's about how to do no harm, how to plant a seed that might bear fruit later in someone's life, and how to set a boundary of protection for yourself. I myself get a trickle of letters as the years go by because people are still able to find me as an educator. You know, my public accounts are out there. And it's beautiful to receive letters years into the future where people say, I get it now. Thank you for challenging me in the classroom, or thank you for bringing that difficult topic onto the radar. I get it now, and I'm doing my part. And those are very fulfilling letters to receive. So realize that you might plant a seed that will bear fruit in the future, even if you don't feel there has been resolution. And I think those are the main questions I've seen. If a question was buried, we invite you to repost it. There's a question about, would the topic of microaggressions be something that gets discussed more in the future of the series? Absolutely. Someone is confiding that they feel undereducated on microaggressions. We'll be very happy to expand on that topic in the future webinars. And I'm overwhelmed personally by the amount of support and encouragement being flooded towards Kirsi and I in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Seems like we're winding down.
So, any last questions before we close up? Oh, that's very kind. I really appreciate your kindness.
Wasn't anticipating that. Thanks, everybody. And we hope that if you do, and you know, if there's one person you can find a conversation to have with this weekend, go for it. And please remember, we are making progress, but it really takes courageous acts, small, big, communal, and personal, to continue to address racism in our community, especially for deniers who refuse that it even exists. Those are, when someone has refused to listen to another and is willing to harm another, they have pretty much annihilated themselves on the inside to get to that point and realize we're dealing with very damaged and hurt individuals, and do our best to not respond in kind. Thank you for your ability to be here today. I wish you a very nourishing weekend with your loved ones and with your families. And thank you for staying engaged in the work. Kirsi, I want to say thank you to the Ombuds office for having me with this effort. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely our pleasure. And I do hope, as sort of a last charge, that between now and our next webinar, people will investigate one of the resources, read something, do something, one action between now and then. So thank you again. You've been so generous with us, Donna. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next webinar. You will receive an invitation to register for it, and as well as the follow-up email today. And you will also receive a link in your email to a survey to give us feedback about today's session. We would really appreciate it if you would be willing to do that and let us know how we did today. And again, huge thank you to Donna, and I agree with the comments that say, Team Donna.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for now being a part of the family of people willing to steward this cause forward and be ambassadors for honesty, truth, and care of each other. I look forward to interacting with all of you much more. Take good care and goodbye.
Bye-bye.